Today, we're diving into the science behind that amazing feeling, that calm, cool focus you get from a good cup of tea. We're talking about a compound called L-Theanine. It's getting a ton of buzz, and we're going to break down exactly how it works.
All right, let me ask you something. Have you ever wanted that laser focus you get from coffee, but, without the jitters? Without that anxious, shaky feeling? Yeah, if you're nodding along, you are definitely not alone. And it turns out the answer might have been hiding in our teacups this whole time.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll cover what L-theanine actually is. Then we'll get into how it creates this brainwave of relaxation. We'll look at how it teams stress and anxiety, and its amazing partnership with caffeine. And finally, we'll look at the verdict, what's real promise and what's proven fact.
All right, let's jump right in. What is this stuff? What's the secret ingredient that gives tea that signature, almost zen-like quality?
So L-theanine, it's a pretty special amino acid that you find almost exclusively in the tea plant. And get this, if you've ever had a really nice green tea and noticed that savory, kind of brothy flavor, that's called umami, well, you've got L-theanine to thank for that. It's literally part of its taste.
So what's its secret? How does it work its magic?
Well, it all comes down to a really clever disguise.
See, its chemical structure is so similar to one of our brain's own neurotransmitters, L-glutamic acid, that it's almost a perfect copy. Think of it like a skeleton key for your brain.
And because of that uncanny resemblance, L-theanine gets a special passport. It can waltz right past the super selective security guard of our brain, the blood-brain barrier. And once it's inside, it can directly influence our brain chemistry. That's what makes it so powerful and so interesting.
Okay, so it gets into our brain. Now what? What does it actually do once it's in there? How does it create that feeling of being totally calm, yet completely focused?
You know, when you sift through all the research, two big things really jump out again and again. The strongest evidence shows, 1, it's great at reducing anxiety, and 2, it has this incredible tag team relationship with caffeine to boost your brain power. Let's dig into both of those.
So here's the journey it takes. First, it crosses that blood-brain barrier. Then it starts playing a bit of a trick. It actually blocks some of the receptors for that excitatory neurotransmitter, glutamate, which basically turns down the volume on brain chatter. At the very same time, it dials up our calming neurotransmitters like GABA, serotonin, and dopamine. And all of this leads to one final, really cool result: an increase in what are called alpha brain waves. And you can seriously think of these as your brain's meditation mode. It's that state of relaxed alertness. You're awake, you're focused, but you're not drowsy or stressed. And here's the crazy part. Scientists can actually see this change on an EEG scan in as little as 40 minutes after someone takes a dose between 50 and 200 milligrams.
So we've got this relaxed, meditative state happening in the brain. That's cool. But what does that actually feel like? How does it translate to our daily battles with stress and anxiety?
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. When it comes to our psychological stress, how we feel, the evidence is super strong. Study after study shows L-theanine seriously brings down self-reported anxiety and stress. But when you look at the physiological side, things like your heart rate or the stress hormone cortisol, the results are more of a mixed bag. It seems to help with some kinds of stress, but not others.
And for anyone wondering, okay, so how much are we talking about? Well, the clinical trials that have shown these positive effects on stress and anxiety typically use a daily dose somewhere in the range of 200 to 400 milligrams. All right, now let's talk about what might be L-theanine's most famous superpower, its partnership with caffeine. This combo isn't just about making your morning tea better, it's a huge deal in the world of nootropics and cognitive enhancement. Let's break this down. Think about caffeine by itself. What do you get? Alertness, for sure. But the downside? You might also get the jitters, anxiety, maybe even higher blood pressure. Now add L-theanine to that equation. You still get the alertness, but you also get improved accuracy. And here's the kicker. L-theanine smooths out all those rough edges. It dials down the jitters and that blood pressure spike. It's like getting the best of both worlds. And the research backs this up with some really specific benefits. We're talking about things like being more accurate when you're switching between different tasks. People report feeling more alert but less tired. And you can actually see better performance on really demanding memory tasks. It's a classic case of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts.
Okay, so we've heard all the amazing potential,
But let's put on our skeptical hats for a minute. It's time for the verdict. Let's separate the solid, scientifically proven facts from the stuff that's still just promising.
So let's look at a few quick snapshots from the actual research. You've got one study where 200 milligrams a day reduced anxiety in healthy adults. Another one found that combo of L-Theanine and caffeine helps young adults with task accuracy and alertness. And there's even some really interesting work showing that a 400 milligram dose can help reduce anxiety for patients with schizophrenia when used with their regular medication. So you can see the evidence is building from different angles.
So what do we know for sure? What's the solid promise here? Well, we know it effectively reduces that feeling of stress and anxiety. We know it creates that relaxed alertness state by boosting alpha waves. Its synergy with caffeine is one of the most well-documented effects. Plus, it has an incredible safety profile. The FDA even gives it generally recognized as safe status. And it definitely shows real potential as a supporting therapy in some psychiatric conditions.
But, and this is a big but, we have to be honest about the gaps in the research. For one, a lot of these studies are tiny. We're talking fewer than 30 people sometimes. We're also really missing long-term trials. Most studies only last a few weeks. There's also no standardized dose or way of testing stress, which makes it hard to compare results. And the million-dollar question is, do these cognitive benefits actually last if you take it every day for years?
And that leaves us with this really big, fascinating question. Right now, is L-Theanine best thought of as a tactical tool, something you use for a short-term boost of focus and calm when you really need it? Or could future research unlock its potential for something much bigger, like promoting long-term brain health? The promise is definitely there, but the final chapter of this story, well, it's still being written.